Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations about Priesthood. I'd like to begin by just saying I'm really enjoying the conversations that I've been having so far, and I really hope that for those of you that have been watching, that the conversations have been helpful and encouraging to you. Today's conversation will be with Dana, who I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with, and I think this is the first time we've met, really. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. So hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Dana, would you like to begin by just briefly introducing yourself and maybe sharing a bit about the context that you're currently based in?
Yes. So I went to a church selection conference in my 20s and then again in my 30s. By the time I got into my 40s, I assumed that I wasn't going to go back for another selection conference and was persuaded to go, and was very, very shocked when I got a yes. So I was ordained when I was 46, so getting on a bit really. I did my curacy in Newcastle upon Tyne, and then came down to the North Cotswolds for my title post, my first job being a vicar. So I'm in a very rural setting. The reason that my eyes stray in that direction is that I can see my church right next to my vicarage. I live in a 17th century vicarage and have a church that was founded in the 850s. And it's beautiful and has a lot of people with a lot of money, a lot of rural poverty. I have two parishes, but I also do a job within the team that I'm part of, and I also do a diocesan role. So I have lots of balls to juggle.
Yes, so I can tell you're very busy, but thank you so much for agreeing to have this conversation with me, and I'm really looking forward to learning from you and hearing from your wisdom as well. So one of the first questions that I always begin with, which is a big question, the question is, what is your understanding of priesthood?
Before I was ordained, I was a prison chaplain. I'd been made a reader in Durham Diocese, and I did 8 years as a prison chaplain. And chaplaincy is probably the model of how I live my priesthood. So I'm not terribly interested in being nice to people who are part of the club. I can be. But what I'm really interested in is the people who are on the edges and the people who know nothing about us, but have an interest in God and a belief in God. I've been very influenced by this book here. It's called Living on the Borders of the Holy. It's by somebody called L. William Countryman. And he starts off by talking about Jesus on the beach, beginning to teach and realizing that he needed to get into a boat. And he talks about priesthood being set in a kind of liminal space between the water where Jesus is and the shore where people are grounded, where people live and work and so on. And that a priest's role is to stand at the edge of the water on the shoreline, sometimes reflecting God to people and sometimes reflecting people and their needs and longings and hearts to God. Wow. That really gets to me, that when I stand at the altar, having spent years standing beside a priest at the altar when I was deaconing, before I was ordained, when I was working in the prison, when I was working around Durham Diocese as a diocesan officer, I would stand beside the priest at the altar and watch that happening as they held out their hands and prayed for God to be present among us and for us to bring all that we are, the good and the bad and the mixed up and the chaotic and the glorious and all the rest of it, into the presence of God.
Wow. I love that. And I love what you said about the liminal space. And yeah, that's quite special. And it kind of leads on to the second question, which is sort of centered around, yeah, from your experiences, what would you say have been some of the joys and challenges of this ministry?
I've been here in the North Cotswolds now for 7 years, 7.5 years. And I have seen not quite a generation of children, but getting towards a generation of children who have grown up through the primary school and the secondary school where I'm a governor. I can't walk around the village without people saying hello. They either see the collar, or more usually they've actually met me. They know me. I've done baptisms or weddings or funerals for them, and I'm just beginning to pick up a whole pile of baptisms for people that I've married over the last 7 years. It's just lovely. That's lovely. I think for me in this context, the joy is in those occasional offices, we call them, baptisms, weddings and funerals, and school ministry.
Wow.
When I was a curate in Newcastle, I was in the edges of inner city Newcastle upon Tyne, which was a very diverse part of the city, West Newcastle. So lots of refugees, lots of families who had come from the Indian subcontinent in the 1960s and 70s and were becoming more affluent and moving out into more interesting, larger houses. And there was a high population of people who were Muslims, quite a lot of people who were Sikhs, and there it was a similar experience, but very different. It was being around people and getting to know them and what made them tick, and making friendships and being there on that liminal edge.
Absolutely. And so what would you say have been some of the challenges then?
The club.
Yes.
The church club. We're in the middle of a reordering process in both my churches. One of them's gone very smoothly. The other one is more complex. So looking after buildings, who knew after 2 years at theological college that you ended up spending quite so much time knowing about all things fusty, musty and dusty, as a friend of mine puts it. So I know more than I ought to about bells and bats and lead and so on and so forth.
Wow.
So yes, and so Monday I had an admin day, and it was the whole day was doing admin. So there are absolute highs, and then there are the boring bits, as you have with every job.
Yes.
The trouble is, you know what the highs are, and so when you have to do the boring bits, it's just a bit grim. But every vicar will have boring bits. That's to do with vicaring, not to do with priesting. So when you become a priest, the most important thing to remember is that your life's calling is to be a priest. Your job is to be the vicar.
Yes, I love that. And I love that sort of helpful clarification as well, because sometimes people tend to muddle the two together. And I think that's really helpful for me to understand. So really final question, really. Do you have any sort of words of encouragement for people who are currently going through the whole discernment process or will be going to the discernment process?
No experience is lost. The church is an institution. Sometimes it doesn't treat people kindly. I have been bruised by some of the processes of the church, and I know many others who have. But I hold on to why I'm doing this, what it's for. And what it's for is for God and serving God and telling people about Jesus. And for me, that's what I hold on to, even amid the the bonkersness of faculty applications to change the building, which seemed like a no-brainer to all of my congregation, or a tiff with the choir, or a grumpy email for somebody who wants me to be more ecologically aware and hasn't a clue of what I'm doing and what we're doing. I think the other thing to remember, my spiritual directors, if you find the right one, are fabulous. But my spiritual director told me at our last session, you have to remember that you're not Mary Poppins. Now, I know I'm not God. I do try and behave like Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way and able to solve almost every problem. And I can't, and I'm not. Yes. And so I have to keep on kind of remembering that.
Yeah, and I think I have to remember that as well, because even in my context, I'm like, oh, I want to fix this, I want to fix that, and God is like, you're not God, you're not me, just sit down, you're V, relax. But no, thank you so much. This has been, as all the other conversations, this has been really encouraging, but also really helpful, and I loved what you said about the liminal space, and I think that's something that I will be reflecting on and sitting with, so thank you so much for that. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day with whatever you end up doing today. And so for those of you that are watching or will be watching, if you've got any questions or would like to know more about the series that I'm putting together, please do get in touch with me, and you will be able to find my contact details in the box below, because this will be uploaded to YouTube. And so until next time, bye.